Family gatherings have a way of revealing buried truths. On this particular Saturday in July, surrounded by 3 generations of Hendersons at our annual lakeside reunion, my 8-year-old niece Lily tugged on my sleeve and whispered 6 words that would unravel decades of carefully constructed lies. She doesn't belong here. 20 minutes later, when my lawyer walked through the cabin door with a manila envelope in his hands, I realized Lily had unknowingly triggered the most explosive family scandal in Henderson history. The aroma of barbecue drifted across Miller's Lake as 43 members of my extended family laughed and splashed in the summer heat. Everything appeared picture-perfect until I noticed how my sister-in-law Margaret kept glancing nervously at her phone while avoiding eye contact with anyone over 40. Her daughter Emma, visiting from college, sat apart from the cousins with an expression I couldn't quite read. Guilt mixed with determination. I figured it was typical family drama, but I had no idea that Margaret had been living a lie that would destroy our family's foundation and force us to question everything we thought we knew about blood, belonging, and betrayal. The people at this reunion held secrets that would reshape our entire family tree, and understanding their roles is crucial to grasping how everything came crashing down. Lily is 8 years old, possesses an uncanny ability to notice details adults miss, but doesn't yet understand the devastating power of truth-telling. Her innocent observation would become the key that unlocked a conspiracy 20 years in the making. My brother Marcus is 45, successful corporate executive who built his identity around family legacy and bloodline pride, but has been unknowingly living someone else's life story. His world was about to shatter in ways that would make him question his very existence. Margaret is 42, Marcus's wife of 20 years who appears to be the perfect daughter-in-law, but has been carrying a secret so massive that revealing it would either liberate her or destroy her marriage forever. Today, that choice would be taken out of her hands. Lily and I were sitting on the dock, dangling our feet in the cool lake water, when she made her observation. The rest of the family was scattered across the property, some playing volleyball, others preparing lunch, a few taking afternoon naps in the hammocks. "Aunt Sarah," Lily said, swinging her legs, "why does Emma look different from everyone else?" I glanced back at the picnic area where Emma sat reading, deliberately isolated from her cousins. At 19, she had striking olive skin, dark wavy hair, and features that seemed almost Mediterranean compared to the predominantly blonde, blue-eyed Henderson clan. "People look different, sweetie. That's what makes families interesting." Lily considered this, her young mind working through something she couldn't quite articulate. "But Uncle Marcus looks like Grandpa Henderson, and Cousin Jake looks like his dad, and you look like Grandma Henderson." She was right. The Henderson genetic stamp was remarkably consistent across generations: fair skin, light eyes, angular features. Emma was beautiful, but she stood out like an exotic flower in a field of dandelions. "Emma looks like her mom," I said carefully. "No, she doesn't." Lily's certainty was unsettling. "I heard Mommy and Daddy talking last night. They said Emma found something that proves she doesn't belong here." My blood chilled. "What kind of something?" But before Lily could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Emergency. Coming to reunion. Don't let anyone leave." 20 minutes felt like hours as I watched my family continue their oblivious celebration while knowing that Robert Chen, my attorney, was racing toward us with information that would change everything. Margaret had disappeared into the cabin. Emma remained isolated, occasionally glanced toward the driveway with nervous anticipation. When Robert's black sedan finally pulled up to the cabin, I noticed how Margaret's face went pale behind the kitchen window. Emma stood up from her chair like she'd been expecting this moment. Robert emerged from his car carrying a manila envelope and wearing the grim expression of someone about to deliver devastating news. The family volleyball game gradually stopped as everyone noticed the arrival of a stranger in a business suit at our casual lake gathering. "Sarah," Robert said quietly as he approached, "we need to talk." All of you." Marcus walked over, still holding his volleyball, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. "Who's this, Sarah?" "My attorney. Robert Chen. Meet my brother Marcus." Robert's professional demeanor couldn't mask the discomfort of his mission. "Mr. Henderson, I'm sorry to interrupt your family gathering, but there's been a significant development regarding your family that requires immediate attention. Before I reveal what Robert discovered and how it connected to Emma's secret, please share your thoughts on what you think that manila envelope contained. The truth about the Henderson family bloodline is more shocking than anyone could have predicted. Here's what happened next." Robert gestured toward the picnic tables where most of the family had gathered, sensing that something momentous was happening. "This concerns everyone here, so you might want to call the family together." Margaret stepped out of the cabin, her face ashen. Emma moved closer, and I noticed her hands were shaking. "What's this about?" Marcus demanded, his voice carrying the authority he was used to wielding in boardrooms. Robert opened the manila envelope and withdrew a thick stack of papers. 3 days ago, I received these documents from a private investigation firm in Chicago. They were hired by someone in your family to conduct DNA analysis and genealogical research. The volleyball dropped from Marcus's hands. The investigation was triggered by discrepancies discovered in medical records during a routine college physical. Specifically, blood type incompatibilities that suggested. Robert paused, choosing his words carefully. That accepted family relationships might not be biologically accurate. 43 pairs of eyes turned toward Emma, who stood frozen like a deer in headlights. "Emma," Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. "What did you do?" But Emma's composure surprised everyone. Instead of the guilty teenager I expected, she straightened her shoulders and spoke with quiet determination. "I found out the truth, Mom. The truth you've been hiding for 20 years. The family gathering had transformed into something resembling a courtroom drama. Children sensed the tension and moved closer to their parents. The elderly aunts and uncles sat in stunned silence. Robert consulted his papers. The DNA analysis confirms that Emma Henderson is not biologically related to Marcus Henderson or any member of the Henderson family bloodline. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked like he'd been physically struck. "That's impossible," he said weakly. "Furthermore," Robert continued, "the investigation revealed that Emma's biological father is—" He glanced at Margaret, giving her one last chance to speak first. But Margaret had collapsed into a chair, her 20-year secret finally exposed. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos she was unleashing. "My real father is Antonio Rossetti. Mom had an affair with him during her engagement to Dad. I'm not a Henderson. I never was." The family erupted. Voices rose in shock, denial, and anger. Marcus stood motionless, processing the fact that the daughter he'd raised, loved, and planned to pass his legacy to wasn't his biological child. "But there's more," Emma continued, her voice cutting through the commotion. "Because Mom didn't just lie about who my father was. She lied about why they got married." Robert nodded grimly and pulled out another document. The investigation also revealed that Margaret Henderson married Marcus Henderson 3 days after discovering her pregnancy. Medical records show that Emma was born exactly 8 months and 12 days after the wedding. The math was simple and devastating. Margaret had married Marcus specifically because she was pregnant with another man's child. Uncle Harold, the family patriarch at 78, finally found his voice. "Margaret, is this true?" Margaret looked up with tears streaming down her face, but her expression wasn't entirely remorseful. There was defiance there, too. "Yes," she said simply. "Why?" Marcus's voice broke on the single word. "Because," Margaret stood up, finding strength in confession, "Antonio was already married. He was never going to leave his wife. And I was 22, pregnant and terrified." She looked around at the assembled family members, but also because I knew exactly what the Henderson name meant, what it was worth. Robert consulted another document. The investigation found evidence that Margaret researched the Henderson family assets extensively before the marriage. She knew about the trust funds, the real estate holdings, the business interests that would eventually pass to Marcus's children. The family that had prided itself on loyalty and blood bonds was learning that their newest member had been a calculated addition from the very beginning. Emma pulled out her phone and began reading from notes she'd prepared. For 6 months, I've been putting together the timeline. Mom didn't just accidentally get pregnant and marry Dad out of love. She planned it. Emma, stop, Margaret pleaded. No, Mom. Everyone deserves to know. Emma's voice was steady, almost clinical. She met Dad at a charity gala where the guest list included the city's wealthiest families. She researched his background, learned about his family's assets, strategically placed herself in his social circle. Robert nodded. The investigation found dating app conversations from that time period where Margaret discussed targeting financially stable men from established families. The revelation hit the family like a physical blow. This wasn't just about infidelity or mistaken paternity. This was about deliberate manipulation spanning 2 decades. Marcus finally found his voice. So our entire marriage, Emma's entire life, it was all based on a lie? Margaret's defiance crumbled. No, Marcus, I learned to love you. I really did. And you love Emma. That's not a lie. But everything else is, Uncle Harold said quietly. Robert cleared his throat. There's an immediate legal issue we need to address. He pulled out yet another document. Marcus, your father's will specifically states that his assets pass only to biological descendants of the Henderson bloodline. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Marcus's inheritance, which he'd planned to share with Emma, legally belonged only to biological Henderson descendants. Emma would be entitled to nothing, Robert explained. And depending on how the family chooses to handle this revelation, there could be demands for repayment of 20 years' worth of financial support, education costs, and other benefits she received as a presumed Henderson heir. Emma's composure finally cracked. I never wanted your money. I just wanted to know who I really was. The estate is worth approximately $4.2 million, Robert continued. If the family contests Emma's previous financial benefits, we're looking at potential repayment demands of several $100,000. The Henderson family reunion was dissolving into warfare. Cousins who had grown up together were suddenly on different sides of a legal and emotional battleground. Wait a minute, Cousin Jake interjected. Emma's been part of this family for 19 years. She's my cousin. I don't care about DNA. But the law cares, Aunt Patricia shot back. She's been living off Henderson money under false pretenses. It's not her fault. Jake's sister Amy jumped in. She was a baby. She didn't choose this. Uncle Harold raised his hand for silence. The question is, what do we do now? Marcus, who had been silent during the family argument, finally spoke. I need to know something, Margaret. Did you ever love me? Really love me? Or was it always about the money? Margaret looked at her husband of 20 years, the man who had raised her daughter as his own, who had never questioned Emma's paternity despite the obvious physical differences, who had built a life around a foundation of lies. I married you for security, she said quietly, but I stayed married to you for love. The feelings became real, Marcus. Our family became real, but it was built on deception. Yes, Emma stepped between her parents. Dad, and you are my dad, regardless of DNA. I started this investigation because I needed to know my medical history for college health forms. I never intended to hurt anyone. But you did, Marcus said, not unkindly. You've hurt everyone. The question, Robert interjected, is how you want to proceed legally. Emma could relinquish any claim to Henderson assets. The family could choose to treat this as a private matter and not pursue financial restitution. Or this could become a very public, very expensive court battle. The family members looked at each other, 20 years of shared history hanging in the balance. That's when 8-year-old Lily, who had been listening to everything with the wide-eyed attention only children can maintain, walked over to Emma and took her hand. "I don't care if you don't belong here," she announced. "You taught me how to braid friendship bracelets last summer. You helped me with my math homework at Christmas. You're still my cousin." The simple declaration from the youngest Henderson carried more weight than any legal argument. Uncle Harold studied Lily's gesture, then looked around at his assembled family. "That child has more wisdom than the rest of us combined." He stood up slowly, his 78 years evident in every movement. "I'm the oldest Henderson here. I knew Marcus's father better than anyone, and I can tell you exactly what he would have said about this situation. Harold Henderson built this family's wealth, but more importantly, he built this family's character," Uncle Harold continued. "He always said that blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family." He walked over to Emma, who was still holding Lily's hand. "Young lady, you've been a Henderson for 19 years. You've celebrated our holidays, shared our traditions, carried our name with honor. A DNA test doesn't change that." "But the money," Aunt Patricia started. "The money," Uncle Harold interrupted firmly, "was meant to support Henderson family members. Emma has been a Henderson family member since she was born. The technicality of genetics doesn't change 19 years of reality." He turned to face Robert. "As the family's senior member, I'm requesting that you draw up papers formally adopting Emma into the Henderson bloodline through legal means rather than biological ones. All in favor of making this official, legally recognizing Emma as a full Henderson heir regardless of biological parentage?" Uncle Harold asked. Hands began going up around the picnic area. Jake and Amy immediately, several of the younger cousins, Uncle Tom and his wife. Gradually, more and more family members raised their hands in support. When the count was finished, 38 of the 43 Henderson family members had voted to legally adopt Emma as a full heir. Marcus was not among those who had raised their hands. Neither was Margaret. "Marcus?" Uncle Harold asked gently. Marcus looked at Emma, the girl he'd raised, taught to ride a bike, walked through heartbreaks, planned to walk down the aisle someday. Biology hadn't created their bond. 20 years of daily love had. "Emma," he said quietly, "I have one question." "What, Dad?" "Do you want to be a Henderson? Really want it? Not for the money, not for security, but because this crazy, complicated family is where you belong." Emma looked around at the faces surrounding her, people who had chosen love over genetics, loyalty over law, inclusion over exclusion. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I want to be a Henderson." Marcus smiled for the first time since Robert had arrived. "Then you are." The legal paperwork took 3 hours. Robert had come prepared for multiple scenarios, and formal adoption documents were among the options he'd brought. By sunset, Emma Henderson was legally, officially, and irrevocably a member of the Henderson family, with all rights and privileges thereof. But the emotional work was just beginning. Marcus and Margaret agreed to marriage counseling to address 20 years of deception. Emma decided to reach out to her biological father, not to replace Marcus, but to understand her complete heritage. The family established new traditions around chosen family versus biological family, recognizing that love and commitment matter more than DNA. 6 months later, Emma's search for her biological father led to another surprise. Antonio Rossetti had been searching for her too. His marriage had ended years earlier, and he had spent decades wondering about the child from his affair with Margaret. The reunion was emotional but careful. Antonio made it clear that he respected Marcus's role as Emma's father and had no intention of disrupting the family that had raised her. But he did bring something valuable: a complete medical history, information about Italian heritage and traditions, and stories about grandparents Emma had never known existed. Emma suddenly had 2 families instead of 1. The Henderson family reunion became an annual celebration of chosen family. Every year, invite friends, neighbors, and chosen family members to join the biological relatives. Lily, now 9, has become the family's official truth detector, pointing out when adults are being dishonest about small things before they become big problems. Margaret and Marcus's marriage survived, stronger for having addressed its foundational lies. They became advocates for honest communication and helped counsel other couples dealing with deception and betrayal. The scandal that could have destroyed the Henderson family instead transformed it into something more inclusive, more honest, and more resilient. Emma's college essay about discovering her identity was published in a national magazine and helped thousands of other adoptees and children of complex family situations. Marcus learned that being a father has nothing to do with genetics and everything to do with showing up, day after day, year after year. Margaret learned that love built on lies will eventually crumble, but love rebuilt on truth becomes unshakable. The Henderson family reunion taught everyone present that families are not born, they are built. That belonging is not about blood type or DNA markers, but about who chooses to love you and whom you choose to love in return. Emma discovered that identity isn't about where you came from, but about who you become and which community claims you as their own. The family learned that secrets have expiration dates, but truth has staying power. And little Lily learned that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is speak up when something doesn't seem right, because speaking truth can lead to justice, healing, and stronger bonds. That July afternoon at Miller's Lake, when a child's innocent observation triggered a family earthquake, we all learned that honesty is not the enemy of family harmony, dishonesty is. We learned that legal documents matter less than daily devotion, that blood tests are less important than loyalty tests, and that the strongest families are built on choice rather than chance. Margaret's deception could have been the end of our story. Instead, it became the beginning of a more authentic, more intentional family bond. If this story resonates with you, please share it and tell me in the comments. Have you ever discovered that the family you chose was stronger than the family you were born into? Because sometimes the most powerful bonds are the ones we create through love and commitment rather than genetics. The final truth I want to leave you with is this. Emma Henderson legally changed her name to Emma Henderson Rossetti, honoring both the family that raised her and the heritage that created her. She carries 2 family names now, but only one family identity, that of a woman who learned that belonging is something you earn through love, not something you inherit through blood. The Henderson family reunion still happens every July at Miller's Lake, but now it includes Rossetti as too, because family is not about exclusion, it's about expansion. Sometimes a child's whispered observation can expose 20 years of lies. Sometimes those lies, once revealed, become the foundation for deeper truth. And sometimes the family you're born into is just the beginning of the family you're meant to build.